It's great to be with all of you here tonight. Some of you have heard my story before, and you know I can talk forever. But I've been given 15 minutes rather than 2 hours and 15 minutes. So if it gets to the 2-hour bit, cut me off, won't you? I know you will anyway. So I'd like to just give you a rather quick overview of some of my story. And I want to say this, it's just a part of my story, but my story mirrors the stories of hundreds of other Aussies that I've met since I emigrated here 4 years ago. And it also mirrors the stories of thousands of others across the world. It's just that you rarely hear our stories, because to some extent they're not that very welcome in the marketplace today. I came out at the age of 17. It was in a small mining village in the north of England. I think I was the only gay in the village, as they used to say. And a massive burden lifted from me. My family accepted me and were very welcoming. And also what happened is I was the first guy to come out in my Jesuit high school at that time in the north of England. And again, people were very accepting. At the age of 18, I left this small village and I went to live in London, the great gay metropolis there of the United Kingdom. And it wasn't long, having been in the gay community, on the gay scene, that I found myself getting very much involved in gay rights activism. I was the first person in my university college to come out. There was no equity and diversity department and people to walk you along and budgets or anything else like that. It was me. It was me on my own, facing everybody else. I was promiscuous for a time. I'll be very honest with you, that's what happened. But I was also seeking Mr. Right. I was seeking somebody somewhere who would understand me and connect with me. And I believe that I actually found that Mr. Right. And we ended up in a committed, monogamous, quite rare in the gay community, monogamous long-term relationship. And it was in the midst of that relationship that I came into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And my boyfriend saw the difference. And he said, I like what you've got. I said, I like what I've got. He says, can I have a bit too? I said, come and meet Jesus. And he came and he met the person of Jesus Christ. And his life changed too. And we began quite an incredible journey together. In fact, he started going back to church and I was attending church. And we'd be the ones who were always carrying our Bibles with us everywhere. And we were walking with God. And we really were very sincere in that. But it was important that God was leading us as well. But it was in the midst of that relationship, as I deepened in my own prayer life in particular, and as I began to engage with God's word, I began to come to a place of realization that I was looking for something in my boyfriend that he was looking for in me. And neither of us had it. And to some extent, the bottom line was this, is neither of us had demystified our own sex. I still didn't really know what it was to be a man. And neither did he. You know, and we were trying almost to, in a sense, rip it out of each other. We were trying to find that in that intimacy that we were sharing. We also looked for a blessing of sorts at that time. And I deliberately mention that because God was very much at the center. So I understand why people are asking for what they're asking for today. But let me tell you, nearly 30 years or so ago, when I was in that committed relationship, nobody, and I mean nobody, in the gay community wanted marriage. It was like, that's for the breeders, you know. Yes, I used to talk like that. I used to wear makeup and be a lot more feminine than I am today, but anyway, there we are. And then I jumped religions. What did I mean by that? I moved from the fundamentalist indoctrination and total allegiance to the lesbian and gay community to a faith journey that was more embracing, that was more flexible, that was more satisfying, overtly tolerant, and love-filled, not hate-filled. That's what I left behind. I had to take off the rainbow-tinted spectacles that I'd come to see the world through. And everything was marred through those rainbow-tinted spectacles. And I soon began to notice that actually, as I left behind the gay community and in a sense entered mainstream society through the doorway of a group of young Christians who just loved me and were vulnerable with me as well, I came to see that I didn't relate to people as they did. I came to see that I saw things differently to other people as well. And I had to learn to admit I was in greater pain than other people. And so it was from there that I entered into just good old therapy and some prayer ministry. And I dared to begin to ask some of the deeper questions about what life is about. And let me say this to you very clearly. Nobody desired, well, I don't know that they did, anyway, at least, and nobody tried, and nobody even suggested to me about heterosexuality at no point. I was just loved for who I was with James, who everybody knew was same-sex attracted because I was out there just like that. Even as a Christian, that's where I was. And I began a journey of deep inner discovery about myself. And I'd be a liar if I didn't say the cross was absolutely central in that. And I had to learn to take every single thought in my mind, and I had to lay it before God's word and say, this is what I think. What do you think? And I learned slowly but surely to die to my gay pride and to begin to enter into a place of God-given humility. And there's a big difference between the two. 10 years later, I married, and I became a father. And to this very day, I celebrate everything that marriage is about. And with regret, a year ago, I got divorced. So I was married for 10 years. I think marriage is amazing. I really do. So I've lived the committed homosexual and committed heterosexual partnerships. They're radically different. I don't really think, looking at you lot, that I need to explain how. But maybe a couple little things wouldn't be too unhelpful. The thing is this, is between two people of the same sex, it literally is about sexual pleasure. It's about me and myself and what it feels like for me and what it feels like for you. And that's about it. The thing in marriage is there's a difference of mystery. And let's be honest, gentlemen, we will never understand the ladies. And ladies, you'll definitely never understand us. That's the mystery. That's the complementarity that has been designed, that in a sense is the glue that keeps us together. And also, marriage between a man and a woman brings about a temperance within us that otherwise wouldn't exist. And that is why when you look at a gay couple, you see the extremes of the visual, look at him, look at him, look at him, and the physical, I'm not going to go there near that bit. But then in the lesbian relationship, you end up with this massive emotional roller coaster, as 10cc sang. I can't live if living is without you. It's all consuming. Radical, radical extremes. I'm not going to be singing again for you, just to let you know that. There's also, in the heterosexual relationship, the excitement of new life. And what that calls us to is to responsibilities. Responsibilities as adults to attend to the best needs and to the rights of children, who are the most vulnerable of all. That's why today it's so important that we listen to the lives of those who have reflected deeply on their own pain, having been raised by same-sex couples, the likes of Millie Fontana, the likes of Katie Faust, of Dawn Stefanovic, of Robert Oscar Lopez, and also for those who have been adopted as well. Redefining marriage basically trumps children's needs and their rights, and it trumps them with adults' desires and rights, and that is no good thing for any society. Another word about children. I'm an adoptee. I was adopted with a twin sister. And together we spent 12 years searching to find our biological parents. Many air miles and many dollars were spent. I have great adoptive parents who raised me in a beautiful Christian home. But it was painful for me not to be raised by those of who have my nature. It was painful. That's what sent me in the search to find my birth mother and my birth father from whom I was created. To be committed to one's own flesh and blood and to have a child be able to be raised by their own flesh and blood is good for everybody and for our society. Even Dolce & Gabbana have said that, and Elton John has alluded to it as well. And so many gay men that I know express deep, deep concern around this area. And for that reason, that's why they're choosing not to redefine marriage. Safeguarding marriage of man and woman is best for raising kids and it's best for a healthy society, period. And I believe that Australian politicians should be concentrating on bolstering the roles of mother and father, not diminishing them further and stripping parents of their roles as the primary educators of their children. So if we redefine marriage, God help us, literally, if we ever do, we take away freedom from parents as formers and educators of future generations. And redefining marriage will also take away the freedom of association, of religion, and of conscience. You see, equality does already exist. Any man truly can marry any woman. But we are fools if we deny the differences between male and female. We have 3 words that I'm aware of, well, there's many words, for water where there's a bit of sand near it. There's the river, there's the estuary, and there's the ocean. But they're 3 very, very different things, even though, in essence, they contain the same materials. We have different words for different things for a reason, because of the essence of what it is. The second thing, or the second core thing I want to speak to you tonight about is this. Is there a hidden agenda? Oh, you better believe there is. I was party to a conversation in 1986 in the Lesbian and Gay Centre in London. And this was between a few Brits and I think a guy from San Francisco and from New York. Certainly they had Yankee accents. They were different to American accents. And the conversation was something like this. The American guys were saying in this conversation that the important thing that the gay community had to do at that time was to infiltrate and take leadership in key social divisions. And what was the goal? Homo superiority and the widespread embrace of all things non-binary. That meant infiltrating and taking leadership in the entertainment industry, in the media, in politics, in areas, in the military, in healthcare, particularly psychology and psychiatry, and more recently in education through something like Safe Schools that invites minors to consider engaging with the very things that we spent years trying to help people deal with and recover with in later life. And I've run a number of support groups to help people deal with that rubbish. And to see it today taught in our schools is frightening. It's just madness. It's absolute madness. That was a conversation in 1986. In 1987, there was something written called the Gay Manifesto. I don't have time to read it to you tonight. I don't want to ever have to read it to you. It's vile. In 1989, 2 years later, a book came out called After the Ball, How America Will Conquer Its Fear of the Gays in the 90s. It was written by a psychotherapist and by a marketing guru, both of them from Harvard. And it was talking about literally propaganda and how we'll begin to affect society. Roll on 20 years and there was a gathering in Jakarta in Indonesia. And there, some of the heads of LGBT organizations across the world met to put together something called the Jakarta Principles. Look it up online. 29 principles, which really are laws as to how sexual orientation and gender identity, with its endless genders and pronouns and sexualities, are literally to take over the world. Redefinition of marriage is only the first stop on a long journey of deliberate and calculated social destruction. The goal is gender mainstreaming, which really is gender mayhem, where any radical sexual thought and practice becomes perfectly acceptable and, dare I say, even superior. And no one can even constructively criticize the fear of having to face, you guessed it, the anti-discrimination tribunal. And to achieve this means we have to, the other fellas, have to remove freedoms of speech, of conscience, of religion, of association, of assembly, freedom of expression, freedom of parents, scientific freedom, therapeutic freedom, even economic freedom. Now, not everyone is part of this unspoken agenda, but those who pushed it have been able to shape the conversation today. And really the hidden and ultimate goal is to destroy marriage, is to destroy the fact there is a heavenly bride and a heavenly groom. We are that bride, and our groom awaits us. It is to destroy male and female, which is to destroy Genesis 1-3, which means if the beginning of the book of life is cast away, then the opportunity for people to find life is cast away as well. And yet we've heard already, and Guy mentioned it, I think it was Guy or maybe Karen, but biology is not bigoted whatsoever. So I fear for the freedom for groups of individuals to gather together, even as we are here tonight, to be able to speak as we are speaking here tonight. I also stand here as part of the freedom team that screams a loud no to same-sex marriage, which at its core is actually a mirage. It is same-sex mirage because there's a greater yes for our entire society, and that includes also for all those who experience same-sex attraction or who are gender questioning. To some extent, I sometimes experience same-sex attraction myself, but I've got freedom in places that I long for other people with same-sex attraction to experience freedom. So two people in a same-sex committed relationship can't be married as a man and woman can. For Australia to propagate the lie that is now being embraced by other Western countries is to ultimately lie to everybody, and most of all to our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQIAAP plus 2S community. I saw another definition from Canada, the LGBTTTIQQAAPP community. Where does it end? Many already see this in the gay community, but their voices aren't being heard. They need as many people as possible to stand up very clearly and firmly and robustly, and sometimes loudly, and just say, no, no. We're saying yes to something greater. So my final word to you is this, and this was in some ways taken root here in Tasmania and is associated with His Grace Archbishop Porteous here. And I speak it tonight very deliberately on behalf of thousands and thousands of Aussies who also experience same-sex attraction. Don't mess with marriage. Thank you very much.